also possess three modes. Under the influence of three modes of living entity, this living entity act differently. This is the cause of varieties of happiness and distress. Text 6, mode of goodness. It is purer than other three modes, is illuminating. It will free us from all sinful reactions. In mode of goodness, one becomes calm, satisfied, compassionate, and helpful. The person in mode of goodness are not so much affected by material miseries. The representative type is the Brahmana, who is supposed to be situated in mode of goodness. In Vedic literature, it is said that mode of goodness means greater knowledge and greater sense of happiness. The difficulty here is that when living entity is situated in this mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge and better than others. In this way, he becomes conditioned. The best examples are scientist and philosopher. Each is very proud of their knowledge. They feel a sort of material happiness. The sense of advanced happiness is conditioned. Life makes them bound by the mode of goodness of material nature. As long as they have an attraction for working in that way, they have to take some type of body in the modes of nature. Thus, there is no likelihood of liberation or being transferred to the spiritual world. Repeatedly, one may become philosopher or scientist or a poet, and repeatedly becomes entangled, the same disadvantage of birth and death cycle. In text 7, mode of passion, Rajoguna. Mode of passion binds the soul to material existence. The mode of passion is characterized by the attraction between man and woman. Woman has attraction for man, man has attraction for woman. When mode of passion increases, one develops the hankering for material pleasures. He wants to enjoy sense gratification. A man in the mode of passion wants some honor in society or nation, or he wants to have a happy family, wife, children, house. As long as one is hankering after these things, he has to work hard. Therefore, it is clearly stated that he becomes associated with fruits of his activities and thus becomes bound by such activities. The whole material world is more or less in the mode of passion. Text 8, mode of ignorance. In mode of ignorance, one is born of delusion of all embodied living entities. The result of this mode are madness, laziness, which binds the conditioned soul. Mode of ignorance is just the opposite of mode of goodness. Everyone under the spell of mode of ignorance becomes mad. Instead of making advancement, one becomes degraded in spiritual life. In text 9, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. A person is mode of goodness is satisfied by his work or intellectual pursuit, just as a philosopher or scientist. The mode of passion conditions one to fruitive action. A person in mode of passion may be engaged in fruitive activity. He wants as much as he can and spends for good causes. Sometimes he tries to open hospitals, give charity to institutions. In mode of ignorance, covering one's knowledge binds one to madness. Person in mode of ignorance, whatever one does is good neither for him nor for anyone. Text 10. These three gunas are present in material energy, and our mind is made from same energy. Hence, all three gunas are present in our mind as well. They can be compared to the three wrestlers competing with each other. Each keeps throwing the other down. So sometimes one wins, sometimes one loses. In the same manner, three gunas keep gaining dominance over the individual's temperament, which oscillates among the three modes. Depending upon the external environment, the internal contemplation and samskaras of past lives, one or the other guna begins to dominate. There is no rule how long one guna stays. One guna may dominate the mind and intellect for as short as a moment or for as long as an hour. If mode of goodness dominates, one becomes peaceful, content, generous, kind, and helpful. If mode of passion dominates, one becomes passionate, agitated, ambitious. If mode of ignorance dominates, one is overcome by sleep, laziness, anger, and violence. Text 11. Sri Krishna once again repeats how mode of goodness leads to the development of virtues and the illumination of knowledge. When mode of goodness becomes prominent in mind, we may start thinking that I have received so much grace from my Guru. I should endeavor to progress rapidly in my sadhana. Since the human form is precious and it should not be wasted in mundane pursuits. Text 12. If mode of passion dominates, we may think I must surely progress on the spiritual path. But what is the hurry? At present, I have many responsibilities to discharge, and they're more important. Text 13. If mode of ignorance dominates, we could think I'm not really sure if there is any God, or not, no one has ever seen him. So why waste time in sadhana? Notice how the same person's thoughts have oscillated from such heights to the depths of devotion. For the mind to fluctuate due to the three gunas is very natural. However, we are not to be dejected by this state of affairs. Rather, we should understand why it happens and work to rise above it. Sadhana means to fight with the flow of the three gunas in the mind and force it to maintain the devotional feelings towards God or Guru. If our consciousness remained at the highest consciousness all day, there could be no need for sadhana. Though the mind's natural sentiments may incline towards the world, yet with the intellect, we have to force it into the spiritual realm. Initially, this may seem difficult, but with practice, it becomes easy. This is just as driving a car is difficult initially, but with practice, it becomes natural. Hare Krishna Mata.
Hare Krishna Ravanaji. Thank you very much for short and precise summary of this section of this chapter. So basically, the truth is that we are conditioned by these three modes. And Krishna again and again tells that we have to transit these three modes. We have to rise above the three modes. Because in whatever mode we are bounded, whether by happiness or distress or ignorance or passion, but we are bounded. And like Lord Krishna has put all the jivas in this material nature. So Krishna is the reason or the cause of our being impregnated this material nature with all the living entities, since he says that he is the seed giving father. And in that way, we have come in contact with material nature due to our own desires, our own karmas, and we are now bound with these material modes. So they have an effect on us. And what is the effect? We will be learning in the next section, which will be presented by Dipesh Prabhu. So if anybody has some questions for Lavanya Mataji, they can put forward. Otherwise, we will move ahead with Dipesh Prabhu. Okay. So I will request Dipesh Prabhu to present verse number 14 to 27 of this chapter.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So So as Lavanya Mataji covered the initial part of this chapter, we understood the three modes that influences our lives, and how and what we should be intending to move forward or beyond these influences. We also understood about the difference in material and body and soul. The chapter actually highlights the material energy and its influence on our character and constitution, the way we are, right? So as a devotee who is on the spiritual path, we need to deal with these three modes, namely, as mentioned, the mode of goodness, the sattvic mode, the mode of passion, which is called the rajasic mode, and the mode of ignorance, which is also known as the tamasic mode. And to rise above, I think the devotee has to be in Krishna consciousness and attain liberation from this cycle of life. We also learned about the characteristics of these gunas and um, how all these three gunas are present in all of us, and different occasions one of these gunas has dominance as compared to the other two. So continuing this chapter, we will understand about the effects of being influenced by these three gunas or modes, right? So Krishna continues to say in this chapter is that what we attain right after we leave this material body is basically based on the mode that we are influenced by, or the way we have led our lives. If you are in the mode of goodness, or in the which is the purest guna, and we live in this mode, we will attain higher abodes like the Brahma Loka. But if you have led your life in dominantly the mode of passion, we actually come back into the onto the earth and enters a normal life in which we might be again be engaged in fruitive activities and activities that we are looking for achieving some results or high achievement. This will actually lead to more stress, and that cycle will continue. And if we leave this world mostly leading our lives in the mode of ignorance, then we just get relegated. We will take birth in the animal kingdom, from where it would be very difficult to um, come back into the path of consciousness and move forward. So what he says is that one who is involved in sattvic mode, which is considered the purest mode in the material world, and he performs activities with pure intention, he gets satisfying results. So he still is attached, but he will be in the highest form or the purest form in this material world. However, one who is involved in the rajasic mode or the mode of passion, he generally will lead a life of stress and misery, because everything you do is attached to result or yearning for a result. And the activities done in tamasic mode, well, less let the better, because those are mostly foolish and ignorant, which will lead to darkness and negativity in life. So that's the reason that we will get degraded to the animal kingdoms. That's what Krishna says. So our intent should be to begin a path, should be have our actions in sattvic mode to begin with, right? Not what we want to achieve, but to begin with, even though it's a mode of nature, which will actually make it easier to attach our mind to Krishna, and then subsequently transcend these modes and attain liberation. So he further explains that if one works in the mode of goodness, the person develops knowledge. He becomes enlightened. So they go to Brahmaloka, and being having a chance to go to Brahmaloka, you are in the company, or you have a better opportunity of developing Krishna consciousness, because you are in the company of people who are on that path. So ideally, we all should be trying to work in the mode of goodness to begin with. However, if we live in the mode of passion, which, as I said before, leads to anxiety or stress, and it leads to attachment towards sensory pleasures, happiness eludes you because you are in constant attachment to results. So, in this mode, he says we will continue to be in this cycle and remain on earth unless one realizes Krishna consciousness. And he again restates that being in tamasic mode has no escape and it leads to degradation. It's filled with ignorance and illusion, and it becomes very difficult once you get uh, downgraded to that level. So we need to understand that. So what he says further is that we need to understand that all activities are a result of these modes at work. All of us are under the influence of these modes at work. And as long as we attach ourselves to anything, be it object or situation under these modes, we will continue to be under the spell of the material nature. However, once we surrender to Krishna and attach our mind to Him, we can transcend these gunas and their influence on us. These influences will decrease gradually. So that's where a bona fide master or a spiritual guru will help us to understand this process and get into a path of coming out of this influence of these gunas in our lives. So following these these words from Krishna, Arjun wants to understand. He has a question wherein he asks that how do we identify a person who has transcended these modes and how does he behave and how he has done it, right? He actually is asking again for us. So to these questions, Krishna tries to answer in a very elaborate way. So he says, uh, one who transcends the three modes are actually not affected by the manifestations of the gunas around them. They are like, they do not hate knowledge or any attachment or ignorance, but nor do they get involved mentally into it. They're not influenced by it. They understand that these are the like effects of the modes of nature and are able to stay neutral or unaffected by it. So as we learned earlier, they only perform the prescribed duties without getting attached to the nature or fruits of the activities they do. The only aim for such a person is being equal towards all situations, undisturbed or objects, and then not get affected by the dualities of nature. That's how they are transcendently situated. So he says the path to transcend the modes of nature is to be in Krishna consciousness and engage in devotional service. That's the way to go about transcending these modes. We need to attach our mind to Krishna or his different plenary expansions like Lord Rama or Narayana. And we can take the help of Bhakti Yoga, and by which we are not disturbed by the activities and its nature or the results. So gradually we will come in sync with Krishna and get freed of any influence from these modes of material nature. As Krishna is mentioned as Nirguna, once we attain or come in sync with Krishna, we also transcend these three modes of nature. So in this way, we reach the level of Brahman in this process. So in the last verse, he explains a bit about Brahman and how the Brahman originates from him. And this is the first position to be situated for ultimate happiness. So once we transcend these modes, this is the first level that we get into following the path of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. And after this level, of course, we continue that path and move to Paramatma and then finally attain Supreme Lord. But this is the first step towards liberating oneself from the three modes of nature. So he says, we should be on the path of devotional service and be in Krishna consciousness. This will help us detach from the material desires and activities which are influenced by the three modes of nature. And in this process, we can transcend from the influence of gunas. And gradually, we'll be situated in the Brahman and then progress towards the ultimate realization of Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Dipesh Prabhu, for precisely summarizing this section. So in this section, we learned about various destinations, if we are in a particular mode, and then how to transit the modes. And Arjuna asked questions, how to identify a person who has transient the modes. And so the various symptoms are described of a person who has transient the modes. And finally, Krishna gives us the like bhakti. Bhakti is the thing only devotional service can help us transit these modes. And when we practice bhakti, we will come to a level of Brahman. That means that we will know that we are spirit soul, and that is the first step in realization of absolute truth. And then Krishna says, if you realize me by bhakti, that is Bhagavan realization, the realization of Brahman and Paramatma is already included. So that is the basic gist of this section. And continuing the next chapter, it starts, Krishna starts explaining us about this material world so that we can try to get out. So I think so, if somebody has any questions, he can ask, or we can proceed with Harshita, taking us to the first section of the chapter 15 from verse number 1 to 11. So, okay, Harshita, you can start.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. So chapter 15 is about the yoga of the Supreme Person. And this chapter is been divided into 5 sections. 1 to 6 is from material world to spiritual world by detachment and surrender. 7 to 11 is transmigration of the living entities. 12 to 15 is appreciating Krishna's position as our maintainer in this world. 16 to 18 is summary of the Vedas and the Vedanta. And 19 to 20 is knowing Krishna means knowing everything. So I will be telling about from verse 1 to 11. So here we have learned in 14th chapter, that is in 26th and 27th verse, about how one can transcend these 3 modes of material nature. That is the process of transcend by performing bhakti. And Krishna is the basis and the supreme shelter of Brahman. And Brahman, we have known that Brahman is the sometimes super soul or soul, living entity. Lord is the supreme Brahman. And thus, here from verse 1 to 6, Krishna tells about from material world to spiritual world, that is by detachment and surrender. So this can be done, the detachment of this material world, we can be done like here, as Mataji has given an example about the Vedas, the material world by comparing it with the prison house. The material world is prison, and here we have from prisoners. So the living entities are the prisoners, and they have been given some dress, that is the desires and activities we have, that is the dress, and the shackles which are being bonded by 3 modes of material nature. And these 3 shackles are being compared, that is the ignorance, the iron, silver, and gold. The iron is being compared with the ignorance, silver is being compared with the passion, and gold is the goodness. And in every prison we have a jailer, and jailer is compared to Durga Devi. She decides which person is being eligible to go to the spiritual world. So as we know, the purpose of this material world, as we have forgot Krishna, our relationship with Krishna, and thus by performing sacrifices for satisfaction of Krishna, whatever we do, we should offer it to Krishna. So the first verse is compared. The material world is an upside down banyan tree. It has been compared with an banyan tree. So the Krishna compares it with the material existence. So banyan tree, the first reason is why banyan tree? Why is it upside down? Because it is the perverted reflection of the supreme spiritual world. Then what is the surface? Surface is the desire why material world came into existence, because of our desires of the living entity. And what is the first roof? As we know, Brahmaloka is the first roof, and from Brahmaji, the creation is starts. And thus, like root is the one which from where something originates, and thus from Brahmaji the material creation started. And what are the branches? We know that there are 4 different planets, and the different planets are, some are going up and down. So the higher are being compared to upper, and the lower are being compared to lower planets. And then what are the leaves? Leaves here are compared to the Vedic hymns. And what are the fruits? Fruits are the results of our activities. We have learned that our actions and reactions in Karma Yoga, that they are results of our activities. then how it should be nourished. So it should be nourished by water. That is, water is by 3 modes of material nature. And why banyan tree? So it is being compared to material world as it is so complex. Banyan tree is so complex and it is so vast. For example, if a bird enters the tree, it is so vast and it's very difficult for that bird to come out of the banyan tree. The same situation is as it's very difficult for us to come out of this material world. As we are being deeply rooted in this material, it's very difficult for us to come out of it. Therefore, we should start getting out of it and find ways to go back to Krishna. And thus Krishna compares the tree reflection to this material world as it's up and down. And hence it is also said that one who knows the Vedas, it's assumed that he knows how to cut this attachment from this material world. So Krishna has given us Vedas because as Vedas, in Vedas, prescribed duties are being mentioned, and which leads to the sacrifices, and living entity offers the sacrifices to Krishna and completes the cycle. And therefore, thus Krishna describes the process of detachment by comparing this with the banyan tree. That is, the world is samsara, and we can sharpen this. The axe is the where which can cut the tree by the axe. That is the detachment, and the axe can be sharpened by our strong determination, so that we can attain the process of detachment. So next is from verse 3 to 4. This is cut the tree with the axe of detachment. As we said that after if we have the determination, we should try to get out of the material world, and this can only be done by detachment. So if we detach from this tree, we have the other place to go, that is about to Krishna, and this can only be done by surrendering to Krishna. And this can this can be done by association of devotees, which will help us gradually to get out of to get detached from this material world. And if we have knowledge, we can surrender unto Krishna. And let's see what is the process of surrender. So those who are free from false prestige and illusion, who have conquered over false association, and those who understand the eternal, who are done with the material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who are not confused, that is unbewildered, know how to surrender unto Supreme Person, attain the eternal spiritual world. In chapter 13 also we have learned from 8th verse to 12th verse about steadiness, self-control, no false ego. So these are the qualities and how we get influenced by the false ego. Mataji had told that we think that we can control our, we think we are the small controller of our society, family, etc. So we should be free from this illusion that we are the controllers. Hence, what is real and free from lust, false ego, and not confused, such people can surrender to Krishna. And this can be done by reading, Bhagavad Gita knowledge. We can overcome this illusion and try to surrender to Krishna, for example, doing chanting, reading, etc. So now we'll learn about the qualities of spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there is no necessity of sun, but in material world, it is very necessary. As in spiritual world, the energy is coming from the effulgence of Krishna. For example, without electricity, fire in this material world, there will be always darkness, and this darkness is ignorance and in this material world, but in spiritual world, it is full of light and knowledge. Therefore, darkness is ignorance and knowledge is light. And in a verse it is said, it is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. That is the supreme abode of mind. But person who don't go to Krishna, what will happen? That is they transmigrate. So from verse 7 to 11, that is transmigration of living entities. So Krishna says soul is part of super soul and eternal part, and we are the part and parcels of Krishna. So after liberation, we don't lose our identity. And when we went back to Krishna, the body is same. We can talk to Krishna and respond to Krishna in the spiritual world. But if not this, as we are conditioned to this material world, because of our desires and activities, will give us next body in the same birth. The major reason is we struggle because of our senses and sixth sense, which is strong, that is our mind, where activities are stored and it takes input from all the senses. And if some activities mind does, and some are stored in mind in the subtle body, go with us. Similarly, we will continue this in the next body, which is depending of the impression, that is the desire and activities. Then in the 8th verse, that is the living entity carries his different conceptions of life from one material body to another, just as the air carries aroma. That is, Mataji had given an example, that is the flowers in the garden. They carry the air carries the flower aroma to the long distance. Similarly, concepts which we carry in this life will carry to the next life by our subtle body. So according to our desire, we get new set of senses. Then thus taking another gross body, the jiva obtains the new 5 senses and all grouped about the mind, and thus he enjoys sense objects. And in the next verse, that is soul's transmigration, who can and who cannot see. So those who are foolish will not understand. They don't know why they are living in this particular set of body. It may be human being, animal, or bird. Therefore, they don't have the knowledge, and they are under the 3 modes of material nature. And those who can, that is this quitting of the body and staying in a body and enjoying under the spell of material modes, is not perceived by foolish people. But those who have eyes of knowledge can see this. But those who cannot, that is enduring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization, can see all this clearly. But those with impure consciousness cannot see this through. They may try. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Harshita. So we learned in this chapter that Krishna has compared this material world with an upside banyan tree. Why? Because it's so complex. And similarly, our conditioning with this material world, with material nature, is so complex. It's very difficult to get out of it. And that's why it is compared to a banyan tree, which is so huge. But Krishna gives us an assurance that with the X of detachment, if we detach ourselves from this worldly things and simultaneously surrender unto Krishna, then it will become easier for us to cross over this material world. And then Krishna describes the quality of that spiritual world. And finally, he says that one is not able to get out of this material world because of our deep-rooted attachment, our conditioning to this material nature. And we are so attached and we are struggling with the senses that we are transmigrating from one body to another. And that is continuing since so many lifetimes. So that is the main reason, because we are so much attached. So we have to become detached, and that is possible by practice. We practice, we surrender, slowly and slowly we can get out of this material world. So if any questions from this section, you can ask. Otherwise, we will move to the next section, which will be presented by Ramya Ataji from verse number 12 to 20 of this chapter. Okay, so Ramya Mataji, you can start.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to present for this chapter 15. Chapter 15, Ashita Mataji already beautifully explained from slokas 1 to 11, and I'll be covering from 12 to 20. So in this chapter, even though we have just 20 slokas, there are most important Vedic related summary and how our life runs. And it also, in this chapter, we also learn about spiritual world, how spiritual world will be, how material world will be, how the person we ask the knowledge of Krishna, how we can go back to Godhead easily. And what if the person is not having the knowledge, how he can also go with the Krishna conscious way. So in this sections, last three sections of chapter 15, I'll be covering first section, which is from 12 to 15, which is like the person is doesn't have the knowledge, he doesn't know about the Krishna. So how he can still try to be in the Krishna conscious by appreciating Krishna. So I'll be explaining a bit more on that. And next one would be 16 to 18, which is the most important in this section where I am covering. So here Krishna explains the summary of Vedas and Vedantas. He also explains the purpose and essence of Vedas here. And last one, Krishna concludes about how the person is aware of him can easily move towards liberation. And also he talks about the confidential information about the Vedas. So starting with, in this, all the slokas were told by Krishna. And here Arjuna is not asking questions. Krishna explaining all the slokas. It starts with, as Mataji already mentioned, how the spiritual world doesn't need sun and moon and other things. But in material world, we all dependent on sun, moon, fire, because in our day-to-day life, we start, as soon as we start, we always start with sun is necessary, because for plants, we need sun. And even for us, we need sun. All the human beings, all the plants, animals, everything, everybody needs sun. Fire, for everything, we require fire as well. And the moonlight, which is really, really important for us. Otherwise, we might not be able to lead a good life in our day-to-day life. So here, Krishna starts speaking about sun, moon, and fire. He starts saying that I am the splendor of sun and moon and fire. It's all comes from me. So here, whatever the energies if sun is clearing the darkness in this world, is all because of me. And even the if you take example of moonlight, which is making our vegetables and fruits as a juicy, so which we enjoy in our day-to-day life, so which is all coming from me. He talks in this sloka 12. And in Sloka 13, he also continues talking about um, uh, the planets. He's also into the planet. He says, I am in all the planets, and that energy, my energy is in the orbit. So we all know that scientists will give a lot of phenomena and talking about gravity, how the planet solar system is working, and how that is in orbit. So here, if you see that, so without Krishna's energy, I don't think we cannot say that it is really in a right manner. So for this, there is a best analogy given by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. So assume if we have in our hand, if we hold one fist of dust, and until we tightly hold that fist, that dust will not go out of that. So as soon as we loosen our fist and open it, all the dust will be spread across the air and it will be spilled out. So it's the same way for planet system also, solar system also. So Krishna is holding in his fist. In case if he is, it means he has control on each and everything in the planet system, as well as all the sun, moon, fire, everything. So here we can understand that he is maintaining all the cosmic world here. So if we are appreciating that, even the person who is not aware of Krishna, not really in self-realized, even he can start appreciating the Krishna. He can also start moving towards Krishna consciousness. So also it's not only in the cosmic world. Krishna is also maintaining in the personal level. So there is one. There are another 3 slokas explains like this way. So we all every day we eat food and we digest. So that's how every day we can eat 3 times food and digestion. So we all usually kids will ask this question, how we are digesting all those. So we give a lot of scientific reasons. Actually, if we think about it in a different way, even before scientists started researching on that, so we are going through the same process, the digestion process. So how is it? Here Krishna explains, I am the fire in all the bodies where the digestion happens. I am also in the air, which is incoming and outgoing, to digest all types of 4 types of food. Here in the purport, they also talks about all 4 types of food. Food will be can be chewable, can be drunk, and can be licked, can be sucked. All 4 types of food can be digested using the fire which is in our body. So here, if you take the Ayurvedic way, this fire is called as Jataragni, and the deity is called as Vaishnava. So here, this is how, even in that portion, first of all, Krishna already giving us best fruits, vegetables, food, everything, also giving sun, moon, as well as now this is the one more added, and he is again maintaining here. It's not only stops here. If you take the next sloka, here he also mentions that, so he is the one who is in everybody's art. So so there are some things we remember, some things we forget, and also sometimes we have that knowledge. So how it happens? So how that person have that? Somebody start their devotional service in an early age. So somebody starts in their midlife. So how it happens? So this is all controlled by Krishna. So it's all like what has to be remembered, what has to be forgotten. Everything is by Krishna. So if our past we have done something, so where we stop. So in our next body, when we move to the next level, next body, definitely that will start from there. So this is the one of the level, personal level Krishna is maintaining. So if you are, and also he also talks about here a little bit on Vedas. So here he says, I am known in all the Vedas, and also I am the knower, and also I am the compiler of Vedas. So we have been discussing from the chapter 3 onwards. Many times we have been discussing on this. So these Vedas are created by him for all the conditional souls, which is they are needed that Vedas to study and go back to liberation. So that is a go back to Godhead. So that's where he talks about Vedas as well in these slokas. So again, after discussing all these things, so here we can see that Krishna is a maintainer in cosmic world as well as personal world. So next section starts with 3 slokas, which will be a summary of Vedas and Vedantas. This is also called Trisloki Bhagavad Gita, because this will be talking about, here Krishna will be explaining about summary of Vedas, where the essence of Vedas he will be talking. And in the first sloka, he mentions that there are 2 types of beings. In that, one will be fallible, another will be infallible. Fallible is something like in the material world, all the living, some except some living beings, most of them are fallible beings. Reason here, everybody go through all 6 stages of our birth, death cycle. All 6 stages they go through it. But when it comes to spiritual world, so all beings are infallible. So that's what he gives the difference. What is there in material world, what is there in spiritual world. So also he also talks about this after explaining these 2 human being, these 2 beings, 2 types of beings. He talks about in the next sloka, he also talks about above these 2 kinds of beings, there is another supreme level. That's where that's where called Purusha. There is in that sloka he mentions that Purusha Uttama, Purushottama. So that is the reason this chapter is also called as Purushottama Yoga. So in this, we all know that we are all parts and parcels of Krishna, but people don't understand that. They will start thinking they themselves are great, but it is not the case here. Everywhere, Krishna is the controller here. And next comes next in the next slokas, sloka 18, he gives the final verdict of what he's supposed to say. In that he says that I am the transcendental, I am being celebrated in all the Vedas and all the worlds. So here I'm the one who is maintaining the whole world. So here, if somebody knows that Krishna is Supreme Lord, and if they are already in the devotional service, so definitely they know how to engage themselves in devotional service. They know the relationship between them and Krishna, so they know how to go towards devotional service. They know how to engage them in their work. So this is again starts with the 19th and 20th sloka. So here, in that case, he mentions that whoever knows about me without any doubt, with 100% faith, definitely he is the knower of everything. So it means he is already know what he's supposed to do, and he is situated already in the higher level, because he is already have the full faith on Krishna. So in this, he also talks about in the last chapter, in the last sloka, he says that this is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. So here, whoever understands me will be wise, and he knows how he has to perfect in the, how he has to be pure in his life. So here, from these 8 slokas, from 12 to 20 slokas, we can see that there are many things we can understand in our day-to-day life. Takeaway is something like we are all parts and parcels of Krishna, so we should not forget the sambandha between Krishna and us. So we should always remember that in our mind. And also, if somebody is not in Krishna conscious, they still can appreciate him by how he is maintaining all these things, and definitely they will be moving towards the liberation by doing that. And other things like so if they really know him very well, definitely they will be 100% faith and no doubt in them, and they're definitely in the good devotion. So finally, so this is like how we are getting into that level. It's all because of how we have our own gurus, and the association with good devotees, and chanting and following our regulative principles. I think that's all from my side, Mataji. Thank you so much. If there is any questions, I can take it.
Thank you, Ramya Mataji. So if any questions or comment, you're welcome. Otherwise, the basic gist of this section is that we can appreciate Krishna as the maintainer at a cosmic level, at personal level, and by this appreciation itself, we can move forward into our devotional service. And then in this section, Krishna is giving us the 3 shloki Bhagavad Gita, and he's telling us about the 2 types of living entities, and then proving himself as the supreme person, as mentioned in the Vedas, that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. And then finally he says that who knows this essence of Vedas knows everything, and he can attain my spiritual nature. And by this understanding of this knowledge, we can be realized souls, and then attain the eternal life. So this is the basic gist. So I think so. There are no questions and comments.
Nothing, Mataji. All the presenters have really done a good job today. Very crisp, at the same time very comprehensive.
Yes,
Thank you.
I think so. It is the shortest session, revising 2 chapters in 45 minutes. But actually, we all came to know at least what we discussed in these 2 chapters. And now everybody is clear, I think so, about these 2 chapters. So I think so. Moving ahead, next time we will revise 16th and 17th, both the chapters in one session. So it's a brief summary, but at least we are recapping all the things we have done in our sessions. So thank you, all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.